Understanding urges. This presentation looks in more detail about how urges form and why they can be so troublesome for people in recovery. In particular, we will show you how the normal tension between instant gratification and future rewards becomes out of balance in people with addictive behaviors. Let's look at the steps leading up to an urge. A trigger is an event which reminds you of using, such as seeing an advert for alcohol or seeing a particular model of car that reminds you of your dealer. A craving arises, which is a desire to drink or use. You start to think about drinking or using, justifying to yourself why it would be a good idea. If you keep on with these thoughts, the craving gets bigger and may become an urge where you experience a powerful emotion to drink or use. Some people describe these thoughts or feelings as so overwhelming that they feel they'll die if they don't give in. How do people get into the state where a simple desire for something pleasurable becomes so overwhelming that it seems to control their life? Addiction doesn't happen instantly. It takes practice. Initially, the substance or behavior may be a source of pleasure, but over time it becomes a way of coping with stress. If the substance or behavior is repeatedly chosen as a way to cope with stress, then the thoughts and brain chemistry become trained in this particular response. It then becomes a habit to drink or use or whatever in order to get relief from the stress. Over time, the brain interprets more and more events as stressful, and life becomes increasingly full of events that trigger an urge to use. What's more, each time you go around this cycle, the urge to use gets stronger and stronger. So even if you stop, the brain is in effect trained to respond to stress by producing powerful cravings and urges. What's more, each time you go around this cycle, the urge to use gets stronger and stronger. So even if you stop, the brain is in effect trained to respond to stress by producing powerful cravings and urges. The problem with urges is that they focus only on the short-term advantages of using. The long-term consequences become distant or invisible. This tendency to give in to short-term satisfactions, even at the expense of long-term goals, isn't confined to people with addictions. Psychologists have done many experiments looking at the way people tend to value immediate rewards over long-term goals. In general, people tend to choose different things if they think about right now compared to the future. For example, if you ask a group of people what they would like to choose for a snack next week, they're likely to choose a healthy option such as fruit. Ask the same question about right now, and they're much more likely to choose something like chocolate cake. The same pattern can be seen in asking about a film to watch. The choices people make for next week are likely to be something serious or worthwhile, whereas the choice for today is more likely to be entertaining. Scientists see this impulsiveness behind lots of self-defeating behaviors, whether it's failing to save for retirement or excessive use of credit cards. People seem to have the best intentions for the future, but struggle to follow through because there's always something more interesting to do right now. In the brain, different parts are used for short-term and longer-term decisions. For immediate decisions, we tend to use the part of the brain that deals with emotions. For longer-term decisions, it's the more analytical part of the brain which is used. Thus, our judgment is often clouded by the demand from our emotional brain for instant gratification. This is the case for everyone, not just people for whom these struggles have taken over in the form of addiction. The good news is that cravings are a normal part of human experience. The bad news is that they're self-reinforcing. If we give in to them again and again, they get worse and the urges get stronger. It then becomes increasingly hard to listen to the analytical part of our brain, which is looking after our long-term interests. Alan Marlatt, psychologist and member of the Smart Recovery International Board, uses the image of a pig to describe this problem of instant gratification. If we act on our addictive behaviors, we're choosing immediate gratification rather than longer-term goals. Every time we do this, the problem of instant gratification, or PIG, grows bigger. In time, the PIG takes over our lives. So what can be done? The solution is simple. If you have an urge and don't act on it over time, it will get smaller. An urge is simply an invitation to relieve stress by indulging in your addictive behavior. If you ignore it, it will slowly subside and lose its power to dictate your future. If you continue to ignore urges, you'll eventually become practiced at noticing them without any real impulse to act on them. The urge to use may never go entirely, but with practice and time, urges become so rare and transient that they might even become a source of quiet satisfaction, a reminder that you've achieved something wonderful, and have a very small pet pig.